Sheriff Daniel Morgan had seen his fair share of gruesome crimes during his years in law enforcement, but nothing could have prepared him for the horrors he was about to uncover in the town of Pine Hollow. It began with the first murder, which shook the community to its core. Old Mrs. Jenkins, a sweet elderly woman known for her delicious apple pies and gentle demeanor, had been found brutally mutilated in her own home. Her death sent shock waves through the tight-knit town, and panic began to spread like wildfire. Sheriff Morgan arrived at the scene, his stern expression betraying the unease he felt. The gruesome evidence pointed to a savage attack, but there was something strange about it. Deep gouges and bite marks on the wall and furniture suggested the work of a wild animal. As the days passed, more murders followed, each one more gruesome than the last. And neither body was found again. It was the body of a local farmer, Jeremy Collis, found on the outskirts of town. His lifeless eyes stared up at the moon, a look of terror etched across his face. His throat had been brutally slashed, and strange symbols were carved into his chest. Sheriff Morgan knew he was dealing with something far more sinister than the usual crimes he had encountered. Sheriff Morgan was not one to easily believe in the supernatural, but the evidence was overwhelming. The symbols carved into the victim's body were like nothing he had ever seen, a macabre language that seemed to emanate dark energy. His investigations led him deep into the heart of the forest. It was cold and dark, with lots of mist hanging in the air. But he could not find any creature or human at all. One evening, as Sheriff Morgan was pondering over the evidence, he received a late-night call from the local bar owner, Tom Daniels. Tom had witnessed something that chilled him to the bone. He described a creature, a grotesque monstrosity with twisted limb, pale skin, and sharp fangs, lurking in the shadows. Sheriff Morgan couldn't dismiss Tom's account, not after what he'd seen in the crime scenes. It was time for the town to rally together. He called a meeting at the town hall, urging the residents of Pine Hollow to set aside their fear and work together to catch this abomination that was terrorizing their town. The townspeople, armed with pitchforks and whatever makeshift weapons they could find, began patrolling the streets at night. They were united by a common purpose: to rid their town of this monstrous menace. But they had no idea what they were up against. One night they set a trap in the heart of the town, using bait to urge the creature out of hiding. They waited in tense silence, their hearts pounding in their chests. And then it came. A grotesque, otherworldly figure with gnarled limbs and hollow eyes emerged from the darkness. The townspeople unleashed a barrage of gunfire, but the creature didn't fight back. It simply crumpled to the ground, lifeless. As they approached, they realized the horrifying truth. The creature they had hunted was not a mindless killer, but a tortured soul, a victim of its own tragic circumstances. Sheriff Morgan examined the creature's features closely and discovered that it had once been a human, a hermit who had lived in the nearby woods. He had been disfigured, scarred by years of isolation, and driven to madness. His twisted appearance had led to rumors, and fear had transformed him into the very monster they had hunted. The town was left to grapple with their actions, the weight of guilt and sorrow heavy on their hearts. In their desperate fear, they had become the monster they sought to eliminate. They had taken a life for no reason at all. Pine Hollow was forever changed by that night, scarred not only by gruesome murders but by the darkness that had crept into the hearts of its inhabitants. Sheriff Morgan, haunted by the events, vowed to protect his town from the true monsters of fear and prejudice, for he had learned that sometimes the horrors we create in our minds are far more terrifying than anything that lurks in the shadows.